In South Carolina Code 63-5-350, it says health services of any kind.
Any kind.
Any kind.
Okay.
May be rendered to minors of any age without the consent of a parent or legal guardian when, in the judgment of a person authorized by law to render a particular health service, what is that?
Right.
Such services are deemed necessary unless such involves an operation, so you can't perform an operation, but you can do all the others, which shall be performed only if such is essential to the health or life of such child in the opinion of the performing physician and a consultant physician if one is available.
That's insane.
That is insane, Randy.
Welcome to the Palmetto Family Matters Show. I'm Randy Page, Vice President here at Palmetto Family, and I'm super excited today to have Tonya Shelnut with Alliance Defending Freedom with us on the show today to talk about parental rights.
Yes.
Welcome, Tonya.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today.
It's so good to have you here, and just really appreciate all of the work that you do here in South Carolina and, frankly, all across the nation for ADF, as you're the one that is in charge of all of the different states and what happens in state capitals across the United States. I know as we talk sometimes in the lobby, you're talking about this state and that state, and I'm thinking I have trouble just keeping up with one state. I don't know how you keep up with all of them. So really appreciate your efforts on behalf of ADF and believers across the nation.
Well, thank you. We have a great team, and it's just so great to work with partners like yourselves in all of the states that we're in. So we're very blessed.
Great. Well, wanted to talk today about parental rights. It's something that obviously has been talked about a good bit in the legislature. I think the more we dig, we realize it's been talked about for a long time. Earlier this week, we had the privilege of going to the South Carolina Prayer Breakfast, where former South Carolina Governor David Beasley spoke. And it was interesting in some of the research to realize that it was back in 1995, the first year that he was governor, that a state representative from Greenville, Mike Fair, introduced one of those early parental rights bills.
Yes.
And we're still talking about it today.
Yes.
And South Carolina hasn't made a whole lot of improvements.
No.
I know that, we have an F from ADF, which is bad.
Right.
F is not good.
It's
not
good.
fantastic. It's
not
failure.
good at all.
And I know you've been involved with various coalitions over the years. So just kind of talk with us. Why is it an issue here in South Carolina, and why should those who are listening to the podcast be concerned about parental rights advancing, here in South Carolina? Because we would all think parental rights, those are God-given. Why do we need to worry about that? So, Tonya, tell us why we need to worry about that.
Well, first, let's go back to the grade that that ADF was given. So our legal team went through all of the South Carolina code and looked at it and graded it on 4 things. Does it recognize parental rights as fundamental? Is there educational transparency? Do we have parental rights in medical decision-making? And then is there a legal remedy for families? And when they went through the code, there's no protections under any of those, which is why we have an F in all of those. And interestingly enough, we did this in many other states, and one of them was Michigan. Michigan recognizes parental rights as fundamental. So that means, Randy, that Michigan has a higher grade than South Carolina for parental rights.
Wow.
Wow is right. So what has happened over the years since 2020, and back, like you were saying, back to 1995, I went back to 2020. I didn't go all the way back to 1995, but I went back to 2020. And since 2020 to date, there have been 22 bills introduced at our state house regarding parental rights.
22.
Wow. And do you know how many have crossed the finish line?
I would assume 0.
That is correct. 0. And it's mind-blowing to me because I'm like, we are in South Carolina. The people here are very conservative. They care greatly about family. And this is about strengthening families. So we went, and what we did in the last 2 years is, as you know, we've developed a coalition. So that consists of ADF, Palmetto Family, Palmetto Promise, the Catholic Conference, the Southern Baptist, the Republican Women, all coming together every month trying to come up with language that everybody could agree on. And you know that is so important.
Yes.
Okay. Of those 22 bills, many people fought over those 22 bills and what language would look like. So we met with House leadership in the off season to get their buy-in. And Randy, I feel like because we put in all of that work for 2 years as we were all trying to figure out how to make this happen, that House Bill 4757 was introduced by Representative Tommy Pope, and that bill and Shannon Erickson was able to get across the finish line in the House. First vote was 116-1 on second reading. Third reading was 105-1, and it went over to the House. So I feel like that vote is indicative of what the people of South Carolina wanted. And so what does the bill do? Let's talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of misconceptions. There are 2 parts to this bill. There's the educational transparency, and then there's the medical decision making. I think it's really important for people to know that the current law in South Carolina regarding medical decision making, I'm going to actually read it because it is so profound to me that this is law in South Carolina. And it says in South Carolina Code 63-5-350, it says, health services of any kind.
Any kind. Okay.
May be rendered to minors of any age.
Wow.
Without the consent of a parent or legal guardian when, in the judgment of a person authorized by law to render a particular health service. What is that?
Right.
Such services are deemed necessary unless such involves an operation. So you can't perform an operation, but you can do all the others, which shall be performed only if such is essential to the health or life of such child in the opinion of the performing physician and a consultant physician if one is available. So
that's insane.
That is insane, Randy.
I mean, as a parent, thinking back about, those are very broad terms that you use, that you could drive a Mack truck through that as far as what someone could do. Because, for years, I remember as a student in school, my parents had to send a note to the school so they could give me a Tylenol if I had a headache.
Yes.
So we've come a long way, I guess, in a very bad way.
In a very bad way.
And so, wow, that's really hard to hear, when you just lay it out there like it is. Right. And so, obviously, I think for a lot of parents, they saw, through COVID, some of the, huge problems that there were. We've had the issue that came up a couple weeks ago with the family, out of Duncan on another issue. Yeah. And so it's just, when you think parents have rights, and then you go to the law and then you see what's being practiced, there's a real need. And the fact that we've had 22, if I remember right, 22 bills.
Yes.
And we are 15 legislative days left in this session, right, with the House having overwhelmingly, the House doesn't do anything quite like that usually,
right,
to where it's 100 and something to 1 or 0. And so what is the prospect in the Senate right now? Like where do we stand in the Senate?
Well, before we get to that, because that's a whole conversation, I want to touch on something that also is important. It's regarding school-based health centers. It's a new initiative. Well, I shouldn't say it's new, but it's an initiative where they're putting school-based health centers, clinics in schools. And so that means services can be provided to students, mental health, maybe even vaccines, whatever it might be. And so at the beginning of the school year, when the school sends home the permission slip, right? Yes. And I'm a mom of 5, sure, Randy, and I'm guilty of this, okay? when my kids would come home on the first day of school, and they would bring the stack of papers, and I'm signing for all 5 of them. I often, until I got into this work, Randy,
Sure.
I often did not read what I was signing.
Yes, no.
And I want to encourage parents to read what they're signing, because they could be inadvertently giving blanket consent to the schools to serve your child in that medical-based health clinic.
Wow.
And because this law that's still on the books does not protect the parents. The school can serve their child if they gave the consent on the form. And even if they didn't give the consent on the form, they could give them that. And so I just can't overestimate the importance of parents paying attention to those documents that are coming home. Because right now, as it stands, to go back to your question, we have this bill in the Senate. And it's been in the Senate since the beginning of February.
Okay.
And what did you say? How many days we have left?
15 legislative days.
15 legislative days.
And the Senate still has to do the budget.
The Senate still has to do the budget, and they're in committees this week on the budget. And next week will be, or the week after will be, the budget.
Correct.
So things are not looking favorable, just to be completely honest with you. Right. And I'm concerned about that. Greatly concerned, because you look at all of our coalition partners, you look at all the years that we've been working on this, you look at all the bills that have been passed on this, you look at the 22 other states that have some kind of parental rights protections, you look at the 9 states that have causes of actions. Why can't we in South Carolina have protections? We just passed a bill in the Senate. The Senate just passed a bill unanimously that gave parental rights protections to adult children, 18 to 26-year-olds that are on parents' insurance. Parents can intervene if they have to. We gave them parental rights protections for adults, but we're not doing it for minors. I need somebody to square that up for me.
Yeah, that's really backwards. That's really backwards. Wow. That's, as you lay it out and as you kind of look at, the legislative calendar in front of us, it looks very daunting. And, and then obviously I want to talk about kind of what can people do as we get towards the end of the podcast here. But one of the questions, that I think we all want to know is there's always that question is, does a bill inadvertently give parental rights to the government instead of parents? Because I know that some people have raised that, and that's the last thing you want to do.
Yes.
But what would you say to that when people are concerned about that?
So actually, it does not give government power to or give power to the government. It actually restricts government power by explicitly affirming the rights of parents, not the state, meaning that parents have the right to direct their children's upbringing, education, and mental health. So it does not in any way, shape, or form give more power to the state. Alliance Defending Freedom is the world's largest religious liberty legal advocacy organization, and we work on these cases all across the country on parental rights issues where we've seen instances where schools have socially transitioned a child without the parent's knowledge or consent. We had a situation in Colorado where a student was forced to be housed on a field trip with a child who was purporting to take on the opposite sex. And so when we look at making sure that parents' rights are protected, we want to not give more power to the government.
Correct.
We want to elevate those parents' rights to the highest level because we believe that when we have strong families, we have strong communities and a strong nation.
Absolutely. No, it's very, very true. And, I appreciate you laying that out for us so distinctly there. And then one of the other questions that I think you and I have both heard around the lobby is, will there be frivolous lawsuits? And, everyone is, scared of lawsuits.
Right.
So, obviously I think that's an unfounded concern, but wanted you to address that for us today.
So I've been working in South Carolina since really 2019. Been here since, working on legislative stuff since 2017, but 2019 specifically. And every single bill They say that.
Yes.
Oh, this is going to create frivolous lawsuits.
Right.
Oh, it's going to create frivolous lawsuits.
Right.
Hasn't happened.
Right.
Hasn't happened. And if you go back to the 22 states that have passed it, have we seen frivolous lawsuits?
No.
Absolutely not. So the facts support themselves. They're not going to be frivolous lawsuits. Another, complaint we hear is that teachers can be sued. And our thing is that teachers can be sued only when they act outside of the good faith. If they're acting in good faith, they're not going to get sued.
Right.
They have to prove that to a judge. So it's not like that's opening these floodgates to all of these teachers being sued. That's not happening. And you and I both know most teachers are acting in good faith. So it's not there's not going to be this whole opening up the lawsuits for teachers to be sued.
No, that's great. And you're right. I mean, it seems to always be the boogeyman on everything. We're going to get sued. We're going to have to pay all these lawyer fees. It's like, it's never stopped us from doing stuff before.
Correct.
And this is something that is just so needed. And I think, as a parent, and you talking about, you're being a parent to 5 children, this is something that is incredibly important. It's been something that we've been talking about in South Carolina for decades.
Correct.
Decades,
Correct.
Not years, not months,
Decades.
Not weeks.
31 years to be exact.
31 years. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I was a lot younger 31 years ago.
Yeah.
And but I just really appreciate what ADF has done. And so moving forward, what are we to do? What's an action step that we can take to try to make sure that this crosses the finish line before May the 14th?
Right. Well, I want to step back a little bit and talk about the why. Like, why are you here, Randy? Why am I here? Why are we here? What are we here for? Because, policy and politics is so fun. Said nobody ever, right? Like,
That's right.
You come into this because God put a call on your heart.
Amen.
I grew up, my birth father left and abandoned my mother and I when I was young. I had a very, very rough childhood. And when I became a mom, I vowed I was going to do everything I could to protect my children, strengthen my family, and make sure that they were set up for the best chance of success. And so when I come into this, whether it's on women's privacy or on the parental rights front, I come at it from a place of deep concern because of how I grew up. I come at it because I feel like the family is the best place for a child, and empowering parents to be able to dictate what they feel is best for their child is important. And so, some people don't like to get involved in this because it is, quote, messy. But listen, God never, ever told us this road would be easy.
Right.
We're down here at the State House defending these battles left and right, getting hammered all the time. And we need our people. We need our communities to stand up and help us because we're only 2 people, right? I mean, our coalition is large with the Palmetto or the Palmetto Promise and the Catholic Conference and the Southern Baptists and y'all, but we're only as loud as the people that are hearing this message, wanting to weigh in.
Absolutely.
Because those lawmakers, they could care less what we think.
Right.
They don't care at all what we think. No, maybe some of them do. But they care more about their constituents.
Yes.
They care more about what the people in their district think. So I want to just encourage all of the people today to take time to call your senator and say, listen, are you going to be a pro-family Senate?
Absolutely.
Are you going to stand for parents' rights? Are you going to stand for protecting the family? Because honestly, 22 bills later, and we're going to take this and just be like, nah, I don't feel like bringing it up.
Right. Right.
I'm struggling with that greatly.
And I get that. And I think for those who are listening, you don't understand the power of that one phone call.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that, when I worked in the governor's office or lieutenant governor's office, if you got, 30 to 50 phone calls, that was a burning issue statewide.
Yeah.
It was a burning issue. So if state senators are hearing from you and you're just asking these questions, because we really don't have a lot of time.
No.
There is very, very, very little time. I know 15 days sounds like a lot of time, but in legislative speak, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%.
And so it's very important, for those of you who are parents, for those of you who are grandparents, for those of you who are interested in these kinds of issues, call your state senator.
Right.
And ask them those questions and tell them we need to pass that this year.
Right. Because we go back to
because
zero.
we go back to zero again.
Right.
And so we'll be 22-0 when we start next year.
That's right. Because then we have to go through the House all over again.
Correct. And really do appreciate, everything that the House did.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, Tommy Pope and just a number of House members really did a lot of work on this. I know you mentioned Chairwoman Erickson as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of care and concern put into it, and listening to everybody's voices. And they, spoke to some of the folks in the teachers union.
Yeah.
They listened to everybody. And
Absolutely.
I, again, go back to that vote is very indicative of that. I'm perplexed on how we worked so hard, but we cannot get it through the Senate. And it causes me to say, what's the holdup in the Senate?
Right.
Because we're South Carolina, we're pro-family,
right? Yeah, and it's interesting too because at the press conference that we had a month ago or so, mm-hmm. there were a lot of senators there, a lot of senators that showed up, and so for those of you who your senator may support parental rights, call them and thank them for supporting parental rights and encourage them to speak louder. Because it is very much a group of people who work together. And so, the ability for them to go talk to where the roadblocks are in the Senate and to move those is huge. And they can do that. Yeah. And so time is ticking. I mean, it literally is ticking. And in these next 15 legislative days, it's imperative that you pick up the phone, call your state senator, find out where they're at, encourage them to support this bill. And if they're already encouraging them to support the bill, encourage them to speak loudly and to get with their colleagues to make it move. Because I'm convinced that once we get it through the Senate, the governor's going to pass it.
Oh, absolutely.
And because it's a good bill, it's a great bill, and just really would encourage our listeners to do that. And as we close today, just really want to thank Alliance Defending Freedom. I know you've bore the brunt of a lot of this particular issue, and it's been exciting in both in this position and in other positions that I've held across the state to be able to work with Alliance Defending Freedom and to see what they do for families, for ministries, for churches, and I just thank God for them and thank God for you and for what you do here in South Carolina and in state capitals all across the nation. For all of us here at Palmetto Family, good day.